20 years ago, Airbus built the biggest passenger plane the world had ever seen, a double-decker giant designed to finally dethrone Boeing's 747. And not a single major American airline bought one. Delta passed. United wasn't interested. American said no. 0 orders from the big three. And by 2019, Airbus quietly pulled the plug on the entire program. To understand how strange that is, you have to grasp how enormous America's airlines really are. American Airlines operates around 6,800 flights every single day, roughly 1 aircraft lifting off every 13 seconds around the clock. Delta runs about 5,400 a day, United near 4,500. Together, these three move well over 16,000 flights a day across the globe. Compare that to Emirates, the airline that bet its entire future on the A380. Emirates operates around 500 flights a day, yet owns 123 of these jets, more than any airline on Earth. So this was never about money. These are among the largest, most profitable businesses in the sky, moving more than 30 times the daily flights of Emirates. They looked at what was supposed to be the future of aviation, and they said, thanks, but no thanks. And it gets stranger. Between 2005 and 2015, US Airlines ordered more than 1,400 new aircraft. Boeing 737s, Airbus A320s, Boeing 787s. They bought almost everything on the market, except the one plane Airbus was proudest of. Here's something most people don't realise. American didn't just ignore the A380 from a distance. They flew to France to see it. In 2004, executives from American, Delta, and United travelled to Toulouse for private demos. Airbus rolled out the red carpet, wheeled out full-scale mock-ups, ran the numbers, and dangled generous launch deals. And on paper, the A380 looked spectacular. But the moment they ran the projections against the American market, the numbers didn't add up. I've always wondered what went down in that room, because the Americans asked all the tough questions. How many gates would need expensive rebuilding? What's the turnaround on a jet this size? And above all, how do you consistently fill 850 seats? Then something telling happened. All three walked away and almost immediately started ordering completely different aircraft. American picked up 42 Boeing 787s. Delta went for 25 Airbus A350s. United ordered 35 787s of its own. So what did they see that sent them sprinting towards smaller planes? To get that, you have to understand how American carriers think about a new route. Call it the Kansas City test, though they'd never call it that themselves. Kansas City sits right in the American heartland, a metro of roughly 2 million, a decent hub, not huge, not tiny, just about as middle America as it gets. The question every airline asks is simple. Can you fill a plane out of Kansas City to wherever you're sending it? And for the A380, the answer was almost always no. Kansas City to London. On a good day, you might scrape together 100 passengers. To fill the A380's typical 525 seats, you'd need travellers from Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis, and Nashville, all funneled through Chicago or New York first. But here's what American carriers figured out, and it's pretty brilliant. Those same 100 people would happily pay a little more for a direct flight than deal with connections, even on a smaller plane. So American Airlines began flying 787s directly from Kansas City to London, from Nashville to London, mid-sized American cities straight to major international hubs. The A380, by contrast, forced you right back into the old hub and spoke game. Smaller jets gave Americans exactly what they'd always wanted, a direct flight from wherever they happened to live. Now you might be wondering, how is a twin-engine 787 even allowed to fly from Kansas City to London? That's more than 4,000 miles of mostly empty Atlantic. This is where things get technical, but stick with me because it changed everything about how we fly today. Back in 1985, crossing an ocean meant 4 engines, no exceptions. The rule was simple. Stay within 60 minutes of an airport in case something went wrong. Lose 1 engine, you've still got 3. Lose 2, which almost never happens, and you've still got a pair to get you somewhere safe. But engines became astonishingly reliable, almost absurdly so, and regulators began relaxing the rules. By 2007, a standard called ETOPS 330 was approved. Don't sweat the letters. The number that matters is 330. That's 330 minutes. 5.5 hours, that a twin-engine aircraft is now allowed to fly from the nearest airport. Think about what that unlocked. A 787, with just 2 engines, could suddenly handle routes that once demanded 4-engine monsters, like the 747 or the A380. And that shift didn't just reshape American aviation, it destroyed the entire business case for the A380. But here's what really gets me. Airbus saw this coming. They already built their own twin-engine long-range jets, the A330 and later the A350. So why did they still pour billions into the A380? The answer comes down to a single airline that saw the world completely differently: Emirates. In 2001, Emirates placed a staggering order, 58 A380s with options for 90 more before the plane had even flown. At the time, it was the largest aircraft order in history, so why gamble so heavily on something unproven? It all came down to geography, and Emirates had it figured out to perfection. Dubai sits at an almost magical crossroads between Europe, Asia and Africa, within roughly 8 hours flying time of 2/3 of the world's population. Emirates built its whole strategy around pulling passengers from everywhere into Dubai, then flinging them out again. For that model, the A380 was flawless. Enormous capacity for hub-to-hub routes, premium cabins that justified premium fares, and the range to reach almost anywhere from Dubai. But Airbus designed the A380 around Emirates' geography, not America's. America is spread out, enormously spread out, with around 50 cities of more than 1 million people scattered across an entire continent. Emirates has one hub serving the world. American carriers need dozens. And here's the part that really stung. When Airbus was building the A380, they asked the engine makers, General Electric and Rolls-Royce, a simple question: is anything more efficient coming? Both said no. So Airbus committed. Then, barely 3 years later, before a single A380 had flown, those same makers unveiled engines with 15% better fuel efficiency. And they weren't for the A380, they were for Boeing's 787. The Super Jumbo was a generation behind before it ever left the ground. So what did all this cost Airbus? The A380 program came in around $25 billion, more than the GDP of most US states. To break even, Airbus needed to sell roughly 420 aircraft. The final tally, 251. And here's where it gets interesting. If just one major American airline had committed to 50 jets, the program might have worked. American flies over 950 aircraft. 50 A380s would have been about 5% of that, completely manageable. Delta operates more than 900. United, more than 800. Any single one could have carried the program into profitability alone. So why didn't they? The answer takes us back to something that happened in American aviation decades earlier. In 1978, the United States deregulated its airline industry. Before that, Washington controlled routes and fares, and airlines competed on service and comfort, not price. After deregulation, anyone could fly anywhere and charge whatever they liked, and competition went absolutely nuts. That created something almost unique to American skies. Passengers became fiercely price sensitive. European and Middle Eastern carriers can charge premium fares because they don't face the same cutthroat competition. Emirates can fill an A380 with passengers paying $2,000 for economy because there might be only 1 or 2 airlines on that route. But American routes are savage. New York to Los Angeles has 8 airlines slugging it out. The instant American charged a premium for A380 luxury, JetBlue would undercut it with cheaper seats on a 737. American travellers overwhelmingly chose the cheaper ticket over the roomier cabin, and cheap tickets demand efficient planes, not big ones. The A380 was built for a world of regulated airlines and captive passengers, and deregulation had killed that world 30 years before the plane ever flew. But say US airlines had actually wanted the thing, could they even have operated it? Most major American airports can technically handle an A380. JFK, LAX, Miami, Chicago all have runways long and strong enough. But the real obstacle was never the runways, it was the gates. An A380 needs special gates with dual-level boarding bridges to load both decks at once. JFK has 4 of them. LAX has 6. Chicago O'Hare has just 2. Compare that to a Boeing 737, which can park at practically any gate at any airport in the country. And here's the math that really killed it. A 737 lands, everyone gets off. The crew cleans it, fuels it, boards fresh passengers, and it's airborne again in about 45 minutes. An A380 needs at least 2 hours for the same cycle. During peak hours, that single gate could instead have turned around 4 separate 737 flights, moving more passengers with far more schedule flexibility. American airports were built around fast turnarounds and high frequency. The A380 demanded the exact opposite: long dwell times and patient passengers. And while Airbus was building bigger, Boeing made a completely different bet: the 787 Dreamliner. Rather than stretch the 747 into something larger, Boeing went smaller and far more efficient. A jet built specifically for point-to-point flying, the 787 could take secondary American cities and connect them straight to the world. Portland to Reykjavik, Austin to Amsterdam, Nashville to London. Routes that would never survive on an A380 because you'll never find 850 people in Nashville all flying to London the same day. But on a 250-seat 787, they work beautifully. Boeing has sold more than 1,500 Dreamliners. Airbus managed 251 A380s. Still, Airbus wasn't entirely wrong. They just built the right plane for the wrong market. Because the A380 genuinely thrived in exactly 3 places: Dubai, Singapore, and Qatar. Small nations built around single massive hubs designed to funnel enormous numbers of passengers through as efficiently as possible. But American hubs like Atlanta or Chicago serve enormous local populations too. You can't fill 850 seats when half your traffic is locals, with a dozen other flight times to choose from. And here's the twist almost nobody expects. That plane everyone declared dead, it's back. Airbus built the very last A380 in 2021, and the obituaries wrote themselves. But by 2026, more than 150 are flying again, across around a dozen airlines, hauled back out of desert storage and refurbished at enormous cost. Emirates now plans to fly them into the 2040s. And the reason is almost poetic. Boeing's replacement for the giant, the 777X, is years behind schedule. So airlines had nothing else on the market that could move that many people through a crowded airport. Demand came roaring back, and the Super Jumbo was the only answer. So the A380 is thriving again, just not where you'd think. Because here's the thing the obituaries got wrong. 380s land in America every single day. Qantas flies them into Los Angeles and Dallas. Emirates flies them into city after city across the US. You've almost certainly stood next to one at an American gate. They're just not American. And that's the real story. Not that America rejected the A380, but that American airlines did, and still do, even now that the rest of the world has come running back to the giant. Because for the way America flies, the math never changed. Being everywhere still beats being enormous. So while the Super Jumbo stages its comeback over the Atlantic and Pacific, it will keep landing in America, wearing everyone's colours, but America's own. And that's why you don't see an A380 with a US Airlines name on the tail, and very likely why you never will.